If online classes return, are students really ready again? Hi everyone, this is Back to Screens. Are students really ready again? Recorded on April 27, 2026, here at 𝗕𝗏𝗏 in Nazareth. I am Aquila J. Dag-um.
And I am Fibie 𝗔𝗍 Rebuta.
And I am Christina B. Colarte. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back.
And that's exactly what we're talking about today. If online classes return, are students really truly ready again? Let's start with something simple. We've already experienced this online learning before, right?
Yes, Mara. It was during the pandemic and it became the new normal for us.
It didn't feel normal at all.
That's true.
But here's the thing, we adopted. We learned online platforms.
Yeah, we learned online platforms, deadlines, and digital submissions.
Yeah, and we also learned how to panic submit at 11:59
exactly.
p.m.
That's true.
But adaptation doesn't always mean success.
But did you guys also know that there was actually a study involving 50 first-year students, and it was about how they never experienced online learning before, unlike us.
Yeah, and their feedback was really revealing. They talked about what helped them and what made things harder.
Yeah. So basically, this isn't just an opinion. We're actually basing it on real student experience.
One major factor was the preparation. Students who had proper training felt more confident in themselves.
But many felt unprepared, especially when they weren't guided properly.
So imagine being thrown out into online classes and without knowing what to do. It's so stressful.
Teacher supports also make a huge difference.
Yeah. Students appreciated quick replies and flexible deadlines.
But if teachers weren't responsive, good luck.
Interactions with classmates also dropped significantly.
Yeah, even if group chat existed, it wasn't the same.
Yeah, and group chats are often equate to scene zones all the time.
Flexibility was one of the biggest advantages.
And recording lectures allowed students to learn at their own paces.
Yeah, and replay buttons, they are lifesavers.
But access to technology was also a major problem.
Yeah, not everyone has laptops and stable internet connection.
And that alone can define whether you fail or you pass.
Students also needed strong time management skills.
Yeah, but many students also struggled with procrastination.
Yeah,
like me.
I'll do it later is the biggest scam ever.
So today we have Lyra as a guest, and I would like to ask you a few questions if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay, so can you walk us through your experience with online classes before?
So actually, ever since the year during COVID, right, we all went through online classes and basically through a whole entire lockdown, and everyone had to shift to online classes. So for me, it was actually really hard to stay focused because you can get distracted because you're using your gadget all the time, and yeah, it was really difficult for me.
And what usually distracts you the most when you're in online classes?
What distracts me the most? I guess it was like I was able to actually I had a stable internet connection, but sometimes it would just I would just disconnect randomly due to like random power outages. So it was very difficult for me to keep up with the lesson, and I had to rely on myself to focus on my academics.
All right. So if online classes were to return, what would you like to change?
I guess less workload, because they give a lot of activities when it comes to online classes, because it gives us since online classes are held online, right, we have more free time instead of being there face to face in the classroom. So yeah, I want everyone to have less workload so that it won't be that stressful, I guess.
That's right. Thank you so much, Lyra.
And we also have Alexander here. So, hi, Mister. So, let me ask you a question. No? Do you think students today are more prepared compared to before?
In the case of like the year 2026 right now, I think a lot of young students right now are likely more prepared to handle online classes than before in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. Because 2020 was a time when it was like so sudden, it was like out of nowhere. We had to have preemptive measures to make sure that COVID didn't spread, but we still had education given to us. So our only like option left was online classes because it was there already, the internet was there already, and it was a viable option. I think in the year 2026, we've had 6 years to like get used to online classes, right? 6 years to get used to our gadgets, 6 years to get used to programs like Zoom and Google Meet. So I would be surprised if a student during those 6 years still hasn't managed to like get used to online classes since then, especially since considering it was mandatory, like, right? It was like a lockdown. There's like a lockdown back then. There's also a curfew, but we were mostly advised to stay inside.
Okay, so what challenges still remain?
Challenges in right now because of the field crisis, it was basically right now it's kind of like a semi like online class kind of thing, semi-indoor learning kind of thing. That dragged in the issues from before, even during the COVID pandemic. Like, for example, internet issues. Some students don't have good internet connection or access to internet. Like, the connection was slow. It would make everything choppy and so laggy, which would obviously limit learning, because it's like a barrier, it's like a noise to communication. Another part is motivation. I'd say considering that you're indoors, all you have is your gadget and you're likely laying down on your couch or your bed or on a chair somewhere, like even during the pandemic and likely during now when there's like online classes implemented but not all the way throughout the week, I think. That brings a lot of opportunities to be distracted towards other things rather than online classes, considering that we have gadgets that accommodate for all sorts of activities that aren't limited to learning. For example, we have YouTube, we have Discord for talking to our friends. We also have Mobile Legends, but I don't play that. And then lastly, there's also the case of burnout. Burnout could be a challenge considering the workload and accessibility to resources that we use to complete our activities. Right now, back then, it was hard for us to like finish our activities, depending on what it was, I believe. In my case, my school had a different curriculum, so I cannot say for everyone. In my case though, I didn't have an issue with burnout up until 1 year after Christmas break. Because at that time, I don't know why, but I slowed down after Christmas break. But I still pushed through regardless. But I don't think that's the same thing for everyone, which is why I would say that burnout would be a factor. But burnout in itself is a downpour of a lot of different factors that could be either stress due to school workload. So because stress is just one of the factors for burnout, there's a lot more, but none of them are currently reaching my mind at this point. So I would say that those three are the main challenges still remaining since 2020 and prevailing till 2026, which are internet issues, motivation, and burnout.
So, given those challenges, what do you think is the kind of support that would help students succeed?
It's very difficult to say, because there's a lot of factors that play into this. Like I said, some people have bad internet. Some people have like no access to gadgets or programs that allow them to continue learning even online. So there's also in the case of inequality to some students. So there are some cases where the type of help that we're giving would be helpful to some but not to others. Like some people have good internet and good access to internet, but some don't. Like they have very limited access to internet, and that's mainly depending on their home life, how the gadgets are being used and such. So it's kind of hard to provide a it's kind of hard to give a one-size-fits-all solution. But I would say that one very important thing we can do to remedy this, at least, is better communication from teachers. I think teachers and students need to be better at communicating with each other. Especially in the case of online, we have text messages now. Those are permanent. But those could be useful, but it depends on the kind of message that we're giving. We don't want to give like vague messages to people because that provides ambiguity. That could be very confusing. Like it could confuse the date, it could confuse the purpose of the message, the goal. So what I think would be very helpful is better communication from teachers. So although it's hard to provide solutions to any kind of student, like it would be very helpful if we were able to give students like reliable online platforms or device loans or data subsidies and whatnot to those people who are struggling, because like I think equality is like a very important thing here in this case, right? Because again, as I mentioned, there are some students who have good access to internet and some who don't. And I think we should help those who don't, especially considering if they have potential to learn and if they have the potential to become trailblazers. Okay. And also, because of the nature of our unpredictable nature of because of the unpredictable nature of online classes, I think we should also be more lenient on our deadlines, especially those who just went through like say a blackout or an internet blackout or another thing that like an emergency, or stuff that would prevent them from accessing the internet, which would be essential or even like required to engage in online learning.
Okay, so how about you guys? I want to know your stance about if online classes were to return today, right now in 2026, what do you think are the best recommendations?
Well, we all know that not all of us have the access to digital devices like phones, laptops, and any devices. So I think that factor itself can hinder the learning of a student.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. It can actually hinder a lot of students, since I also personally know some students who actually struggle with that. And yeah, I can testify that they actually really do struggle with that problem. And I would say that the best recommendation that I can give is that if teachers were to consider that and not just neglect that need, and that they would give, the modules, what do you call that, the physical modules, not the one online, so that it can cater the students who don't have access to digital devices, like some people we know in rural areas who want to learn, who is motivated to learn and has that passion to study.
That's right, Phoebe. So one factor also is the home environment. So what can you say about that?
Yeah, I think also that crowded spaces, because sometimes our home can be very crowded, right, with family members, can be very hard to learn. And
yeah, like sometimes your classroom is literally your bed.
That's true.
Actually, that's so true because I actually experienced that since we live in a house with a family of 5, and I have 2 younger siblings, and sometimes it can be very loud, so it's difficult to be let's focused in online class. And especially when I have to talk to the teacher, I still have to tell them to tone down so that it won't be distracting for the people I'm in an online class with. And as well as my home environment, we actually have a farm, so the animals can be very loud. So that's when I get really distracted because I can't just go outside and tell them to be quiet. Yeah.
Actually, the animals can be a background noise for your online learning. Just kidding. And Alexander, would you like to tell us your insights about this?
Okay, so in my case, it's actually been the other way around. For my home environment, it was actually pretty quiet for the most part, especially during 2020 to 2026. In the case of 2020 to 2024, it's been really quiet considering my parents have always been out, and my little brother is either with them or upstairs doing something, which left me alone downstairs in the living room where I usually am. That place is also where I usually partake in online learning and online classes. What made it different and what made it what made it different from Lyra's case is that, of course, there's no one around. But I'm pretty much the only one there, which allowed me to partake in it peacefully and without any distractions from everything else around me. But that's only the case because there were very specific factors that played into this. My parents were busy throughout that period, which left me alone, which is a plus. And my brother was in a place away from me, which meant less distractions. So again, home environment is dependent on a lot of different factors, like how many relatives are in your house, like what kind of home is it, or where is your home? Like, is it in a place in either Nazareth where it's busy? There's probably even a mall nearby, so it's gonna get very noisy. Or is it in like a subdivision or a villa where it's quiet and there's not a lot of people going out? So it's in that case, that's where I live, which played into my positive home environment.
But have you guys ever wondered why some students actually prefer online classes or online learning rather than learning face-to-face or face-to-face discussions? What do you think is like the major factor or the factors that made them want online classes?
Phoebe, I think it's because of the flexibility and accessibility, right?
Right, Tina. So with that factor, students can learn anytime and anywhere, and it is easier for them to balance school and family responsibilities, and that factor can build self-discipline and independence.
Yeah.
And actually, an example is like recorded lectures, right? The student can learn at their own pace, and they can rewind that recorded lecture to understand more of the lesson. And yeah, they can be flexible with their time, and you can access it easily.
Right, that's true.
Okay, but in this case, the freedom to have flexible learning in the case of like online classes and learning, it needs discipline because for online learning, I believe I mentioned already that we use our gadgets for that. And gadgets are essentially convergent media. It is an access to a lot of different applications that have different uses. I believe I said that already. So it can be, again, it's a distraction. These are all things that I've said before. So we need to be able to discipline ourselves to block out those distractions in the case of online learning.
In this segment, we will look at what different studies and statistics say about online learning. This helps us understand that these experiences are not just personal opinions, but it is also backed up by studies or researches.
So, according to Moralista and 𝗏𝗏, one of the biggest issues is limited interaction.
In a physical classroom, interaction is natural. Students can ask questions instantly, and teachers can read body language, and discussions flow more easily.
But in online classes, that natural interaction becomes reduced. Some students stay silent, some keep their cameras off, and others hesitate to speak even when they have questions.
And because of that, classes often become one-way communication, where the teacher speaks and students mostly listen.
Another issue is that online learning feels impersonal.
Yes, the emotional connection between teachers and students becomes weaker. It's harder to build rapport or a sense of classroom community.
Yeah, even simple things like casual conversations before and after the class are reduced, which affects the overall learning atmosphere.
And this can lead to students feeling disconnected or less motivated to participate actively.
And monitoring students is also a major challenge.
Teachers cannot easily check if students are actually paying attention, taking notes, or even present during class.
Unlike in physical classrooms where teachers can observe behavior directly, online learning gives limited visibility.
And because of this, it becomes harder to assess real learning progress.
Another serious concern is academic dishonesty.
That's right. Cheating becomes easier in online settings. Students could quickly search answers or share responses during assessments.
This raises concerns about whether grades still reflect actual understanding or just access to information.
And if students rely too much on shortcuts, they may pass subject without really truly access to information.
That's right, which affects not only academic performance, but also long-term knowledge and skills development.
So overall, these issues like limited interaction, impersonal learning, monitoring difficulties, and academic dishonesty, it shows that online learning has deep challenges beyond just technology.
So if we reflect on our own experiences, many of these issues might feel familiar.
That's right. There were times when classes felt quiet, awkward, or disconnected, especially when no one wanted to speak during online discussions.
Yes, and sometimes even if we wanted to participate, technical problems or unstable internet made it difficult to join consistently.
There were also moments when students were present but not fully engaged, simply because the environment made it harder to focus.
And these small experiences actually reflect the bigger findings of the study. So now, we would like to ask you guys. So how about you, Lyra? Have you had experiences where online classes felt too awkward or maybe too quiet for you?
Well, yes, actually, because during my past experience back in 2021 was during the COVID pandemic. Actually, it did feel awkward and it was mostly quiet because people would not participate whenever the teacher would ask questions, and they would just keep their mics muted, expecting someone to talk instead. And so there was really a lack of participation, and it also made me lose my confidence because I myself was also quiet, and I wasn't that confident in answering in online classes, and I felt like I was disconnected to everyone, even though we were in the same Zoom call. Also, I have an experience where about the students being not engaged in online classes, because I have a friend and they would be in the Zoom call, right? We're classmates, but their attention span would mostly be on their games or they're on their phone, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's cams are off, so you don't know what they're doing behind the screen or what they're doing behind during online classes. So it felt like yeah, it just felt really quiet, and there was really a lack of participation, and that's like a really huge problem.
That's right. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. How about you, Alexander?
Okay, so from my experience, I don't remember that much actually from 2020 to 2024, I believe, because it was mainly really boring. So it kind of blocked it out of my memory. But I do remember most stuff from 2026. A lot of what made it awkward is that there are moments where there was just, again, she said that there was a bunch of silence after our teacher either requested someone to answer or gave a student a question. That's mainly because, again, as she said, everyone's mics and cameras are off. So instant feedback is just not happening there when everyone's mics are off and they have to manually turn it on. This is also very obvious in the case when our teacher has to either do something or find something to show to our class. That's only in the case if they haven't pre-prepared it to show it to us. So you're kind of just sitting there watching your teacher like rummage through files and folders to find that one PDF or that one website online. So the silence made it very awkward. And whenever the silence happened when our teacher asked a question and no one responded, I'm pretty sure it made it feel like the teacher is talking to a wall.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys felt that as well? Because like, who's she talking to? Like, she's supposed to be talking to us, but we're not responding immediately. So it feels so awkward for them, and it also may even feel disappointing. It raises the question over whether or not we were actually like engaging with the lessons, especially considering how online classes allow people to be much more distracted to other things. And another thing about it that made it feel awkward for me is that it kind of felt disconnected. Say, like, screens are different from real life, being in the moment. When you're just looking at a screen, you don't really have much freedom to physically interact with the teacher in the moment. That extra silence would make everything so much more awkward because it's needless waiting. Unlike in real life when you can just ask the teacher a question and feedback is almost instantaneous. Have you felt that?
Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty much all of what made it so awkward for me. I can't think of anything else.
Alright, thank you for that, Alexander. So, if we put everything together, we see that online learning is not just about switching from paper to screens.
It involves readiness, both in terms of skill, technology, and emotionally adjustment.
And that leads us to a bigger question. If we struggled before, what happens if we go back?
Are students really ready to return to screen-based learning?
Or are we just assuming that because we've done it before, we're automatically prepared for now?
Because readiness is not just about access, it's about comfort, engagement, and effectiveness.
And that exactly brings us directly to our main discussion. Back to screens. Are students really ready again?
Before we move to our final thoughts, let's take a step back and look at a study that really helps explain the bigger picture. This research gives us actual data, not just opinions, which makes our discussion more grounded.
Okay, so the study was conducted by Maria Marietta Basbas and was published in the Journal of Pedagogy and Education Science. It focuses on 163 students from the University of Nueva Cáceres here in the Philippines, which makes the findings very relevant to us.
Ooh, so what's interesting is that the study didn't just ask if students were ready. It actually broke readiness down into different areas. So instead of a simple yes or no, it gives a more realistic view of where students are struggling and where they're doing okay.
So according to 𝗏𝗏, students were overall approaching readiness with a mean score of 3.22 out of 4. This basically means students are somewhat capable but still not fully prepared for a complete shift to online learning.
That's right. So instead of saying students are ready or not ready, the study suggests that they are somewhere in the between. They have the basic skills, but they still need support and improvements in skill areas.
And honestly, that makes sense based on our own experiences. We can function in online classes, but it doesn't always mean we're doing well or learning effectively.
Yeah, for communication, students were actually considered ready, especially in using tools like email and discussion boards. This shows that interacting online is not really the main problem anymore.
For online learning behavior, students can follow instructions and set goals, which is a good sign. However, they still struggle with self-discipline, especially when studying independently at home.
Which is honestly very relatable because being at home makes it harder to stay focused. There are just too many distractions and it's easy to lose motivation.
So when it comes to technical skills, students are capable of basic tasks like submitting files or navigating platforms. But they may still struggle when problems occur or when systems become more complicated.
And the lowest scoring data in the study was time management, which is actually very important in online learning. Students reported difficulty staying on task and avoiding distractions, which affects their overall performance.
So even if students have the tools and knowledge, managing time is still a major challenge. And without that, it's hard to stay consistent in online classes.
So, based on 𝗏𝗏's study, students are not completely unprepared, but they are also not fully ready. There are still gaps that need to be addressed before online learning can truly be effective.
And what's interesting is that these findings match what we've been discussing earlier. The challenges students face are not new. They are just becoming more visible in an online setup.
So it's not just a personal struggle, it's something a lot of students are experiencing. And that's why it's important to look at both data and real experiences.
Now, aside from student readiness, it's also important to look at the perspective of teachers. After all, they play a huge role in how effective online learning becomes or actually becomes.
Another study by Veronica Entarayo, Rafael Michael O. Paz, and Emmehigio C. Gepila Jr. explored how English teachers experience the shift into flexible learning. This study focuses on Filipino educators, making it highly relevant to our context as well.
And again, what makes this study interesting is that it doesn't just focus on problems. It also looks at both advantages and areas for improvement. So again, it gives a balanced perspective instead of just one side.
This study found out that while many challenges were considered manageable, some issues stood out more than others. These include difficulty in understanding lessons, low student engagement, and unstable internet connection.
Yes. And these challenges directly affect how teachers deliver lessons and how students receive them. So, even if teachers are prepared, external factors can still limit effective learning.
And again, these are the same problems students are experiencing. So, both sides, teachers and students, are dealing with similar struggles.
Despite the challenges, the study also identified some benefits of flexible learning. These include convenience and improved flexibility in teaching and learning processes.
This shows that online learning is not entirely negative, and it can actually work under the right conditions. However, these conditions need to be properly supported by schools or institutions.
So it's not about removing online learning completely. It's about improving how it's done. because with the right system, it can still be effective.
The study also emphasized several recommendations to improve online learning. This includes better planning, stronger implementation, and consistent monitoring from school administrations.
It also highlights the need for reliable internet access and better technological resources for both the teachers and the students. Without these, even the best teaching strategies may not be so effective.
And lastly, training and skill development were emphasized because both teachers and students need to continuously adapt to this kind of learning setup.
So, when we ask if students are ready, we also have to consider if the system is ready. Because readiness is just not an individual responsibility, it's also institutional.
So, students and teachers can only do so much on their own. Without proper support, the challenges will still continue to exist.
So in the end, it's really a shared responsibility, and that's something we need to recognize before moving forward.
That's right. In our case though, since we have shifted to online classes for our Monday and Friday schedules, what have you guys observed about it? Did you like it or do you not like it maybe?
Well, actually, from what I've observed, right, because a few of our instructors in USTP, they use online platforms that are actually accessible to the students in USTP, and instead of conducting online classes, so they it's like more flexible and convenient.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, some of them don't. Sometimes they don't do online classes at all.
Yeah.
Because of the problems you've mentioned, like some people just can't access it. The disconnect is just too much, and it's also awkward. Because instead of that, they gave us like assignments like over that period to do, so that we'll still be able to like learn and actively do something on our own.
Yeah.
And also, along with that, along with giving us assignments, they also give us like the required materials we need to learn. Sometimes, kind of like a PPT or a handout, basically.
Yeah. And just like also in our youth step, right?
Yeah.
Where videos were uploaded and there were also like quizzes where we can answer that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So some schedules, also some of the online schedules were moved to like Thursday so that we can meet face to
You can meet
face.
like face to face to accommodate for like the Monday and Friday schedule.
Yeah.
So it's not so obstructive.
Instead of online classes, because online classes involves many difficulties like internet.
And that's actually something that I really like about our instructors, because they choose to do face-to-face classes instead of merely doing online classes for it just for a lesson to be done. So they actually want us to participate actively, right?
That's what the assignments are for.
Yeah, exactly. So now we are moving on to some of the quantitative studies that we have found online. So this statistical study was conducted by Bandar and Alarifi, which is entitled Online versus In-Person Learning in Higher Education, the Effects on Student Achievement and Recommendations for Leadership. So the attached image below shows the statistic itself that some courses, or all of them, actually prefer face-to-face classes, which is the blue bar, than online classes, which is the orange bar.
Another study by 𝗪𝗠 and Co. In the study of online versus in-person learning in higher education, the effects on students' achievement and recommendations for leadership, we can see that 16% they prefer only online learning, and then 31% they prefer only classroom learning, and then 53% which they prefer combined approach. So in this study we can see that most of them prefer combined approach. So final question, are we ready?
We are definitely more experienced,
But not fully prepared.
Maybe before we adopted out of necessity.
But now, we actually expect better systems.
And better support.
So, if online classes return, it's not just about logging in.
It's about surviving and actually learning.
And making sure that nobody is left behind.
Because going back to online classes isn't the hardest part.
Staying engaged in them is.
This has been Mia,
Where no one is missing, but media is in action.
Back to screens, our students really ready again. Thank you for listening. Bye!
Bye.